Okay, so that's kind of the general location, some of the ways that we divide up the world. So let's look at this idea of once a state has been developed, what, how is that power organized within the state? And there's two general types. We talk about countries as being unitary versus a federal state. And so let's look at the two. A unitary state has a central government, and that central government holds all the legal power, all the powers. So that in France, the driving speed is the same across the entire country. And the rules for education are the same across the country. Seatbelt laws are the same across the country. In a federal state, that power is shared, and so that there's a central government and then there's regional units. So in the United States, we have our states as regional territorial units, so Oregon. So Montana has different driving speeds than Oregon does. We have different rules about how many days a student needs to go to school. We have different seatbelt laws. And so this is one of the difference between the two types of government. So when we look at this idea of unitary states, most countries in the world are unitary. This idea of federal states is more unique. And so what happens is people come to the node, they hammer out what the laws are going to be for the entire country, and then they go out to their different units, whether they be provinces or regions, and those laws are imposed. With a federal state, this idea is to really represent the interests of a very multicultural or very diverse area. So in Canada, in the United States, we have very diverse populations, very different needs. And so that's one of the reasons that everybody gets to have a say and people feel that they're heard. This is one of the things that just was in the news today, was trying to change abortion laws in Texas. If this were a federal, or if this were a unitary state, the abortion law would be the same no matter where you were. And in the United States, we have the ability to make those regional differences. This idea of a federal state has been seen as a good solution in an area where you have a lot of diversity. So one of the examples is in Nigeria, in India, in Switzerland. If let's say let's just go back to the United States. So let's say that we had a unitary government, and most of the political body was from Virginia. People in Texas, people in Oregon would feel very unheard and very unsupported. And so with a federal system of government, there's this sense that as the populations change, people can still feel like they're being supported, and they're having a little bit more control in the government. So the book also talks about supranational organizations, and this is kind of, I think of these a little bit like a union, where when people bind together with one voice, they have a little bit more economic and political power. And the same with the EU, the Arab League, and so usually these have been developed for some kind of economic purpose. I think the Association of Southern Asian Nations was originally developed, as was the EU, to make tariffs from one country to the other, to equalize those, or make it less expensive to move materials back from one place to the other. So do some Googling. Know how many countries are in the EU. Find out why Turkey wants to be in the EU and why people think it will never make it. These are just really just voluntary organizations who choose to, I love this, to give up some of their power for the greater good. You're also going to see the term nation state, And nation states are states that have pretty much uniform cultural and culture and ethnicity. So Japan is just a classic example of a nation state. So is Portugal. Lesotho, which we talked about, and one of the reasons it's a nation state is probably because it's an enclave. So think about the nation states maybe where they're somewhat landlocked. Maybe the physical geography has a lot to do with why places are culturally homogeneous. And then besides nation state, there's stateless nations. And these are large ethnic groups that have no official sovereign nation, sovereign land, no territory. And so we see that two examples. One is the Kurdish region, and people call it Kurdistan, but there is no Kurdistan. The book has an example of where the Kurdish nation would be, but this is not a sovereign country. This is an area in the middle or on the edges of Syria, Iraq, Iran, Azerbaijan, and Turkey, where there are high numbers of Kurdish ethnicity. And so one of your questions is to really think about why would a federal government help this situation, and why Kurdistan is not, why these countries aren't really willing to give up part of their land for Kurdistan. Part of that is that there's oil reserves and prime agricultural land. The other stateless nation that you'll read about this week is Palestine. There's two videos, one called The Wall, and you often hear this term, the two-state solution, which would be to create a sovereign state or a sovereign piece of land for the Palestinian people. Right now they're under control from Jerusalem or Israel. And so I want you to watch that video that's about the wall and think about, is the wall effective? It's an awful lot like the wall between the U.S. and Mexico. Is it humane? And think about the video. Is it biased? Where is that coming from? So that'll take a little Googling on your part for that as well. Then the book kind of talks a little bit about what pulls countries together, what pushes them apart. So this fragmentation or cohesiveness. And there's two general categories of forces. One are centripetal forces. Centripetal forces are the things that seem to bring countries together, a country together, and centrifugal forces are the things that create fragmentation or blow a country apart. So the federalism is one way that you can kind of pull a country together by everybody having a voice. Although Nigeria is a little bit in flux right now, but historically they have had huge diversity in religious and ethnic groups and have been able to manage fairly well. So another centripetal force is this idea of an external threat. So if a country feels like it's being threatened, real or imagined, that can pull a country together against a common enemy. Charismatic leaders, Nelson Mandela was a very strong centripetal force in South Africa for the African ethnicity or African people in that country. And then national institutions, they can really cause a lot of nationalism, a lot of flag waving, and a lot of just feeling a part of, feeling connected. So strong educational institutions, monuments, sports league, the space program did a lot for the United States to pull it together into a cohesive unit. Centrifugal forces are the things that pull a country apart, and challenges by ethnic minorities, civil unrest. A lot of things can happen in a country right now. I'm wondering about the Tea Party, what that will do. Will that be a centrifugal force for us and the shutting down of the government for a while, or will that be a centripetal? Will it pull people together? You can have inequality in an area. You can have uneven balance of power, uneven balance of resources that can have this division. And you see that in Sudan, which recently split into northern and southern Sudan because the ethnic differences were so great and the resource differences were so great. Also, globalization in a way that can be a way to have centrifugal forces. So there's this idea that are we moving toward, I talked about sovereignty and trying to respect other countries' rules and ways of beings, but there's some idea that we're kind of, with globalization, moving to this kind of the big four as far as world decision making, the US and the EU, which kind of operates as a big body now and a very, very powerful body, Russia and China, and can we look at the world in this from these four major deciding countries that make kind of a lot of the major decisions. Some other things that are called that will cause kind of division is economic forces. You can have differences of wealth. I think I mentioned that. You can have differences in just agricultural South. Right now, the U.S., the Civil War was fought kind of on that division of labor and division of technology as part of the root of change or of centrifugal divisions. And then globalization. Is that centripetal or centrifugal? I have to kind of really look at what role that plays. And then we could kind of end up with this idea of the Arab Spring as an example of centrifugal forces. So a great example of diffusion, hierarchical diffusion from Tunisia, where the first civil unrest happened, and all of this based on the economic situation of countries, poverty, high unemployment, food prices, this economic gaps, and then violations in human rights. But the way that it was done, the globalization, the multimedia playing a really strong role in people learning about this, people being able to reproduce that for different reasons in different areas. So we can end that this chapter kind of thinking about, again, will we get these four countries or these four political units trying to balance and stable the world? And so where do the oil-rich countries fit into this kind of equation of these four giants? Okay, we're done with that one.